if you do
Mhm.
want to find your true self, you do have to make a huge sacrifice of some kind. So Jordan Peterson said, you have to be willing to lose your life in order to find it. And that's really been sticking with me. And I guess that kind of goes back to maybe like taking off all those layers of yourself that society has put on you too, is that you have to lose all of that in order to find yourself. And that's really hard to do because that
Mm.
would feel so, it feel so unsafe, uncertain, and just it's just plain hard. And we all
Yeah.
have so many things going on in our lives on a daily basis that we're trying to manage, that taking on something that's hard is not something that most of us are willing to do.
Mm.
I mean, most
Mm.
people can't even ignore their phone when it's going off, and so it's like, so how can we expect that most of us are going to be able to make a huge sacrifice, the type of sacrifice that it was required to find our true self? That's
Yeah.
why I say I don't think there's too many people that are going to do that.
No, I don't think so. I mean that's the whole purpose of the show, really, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
like
true. Yeah,
even in
that's
the
the point.
intro, we talk about settling in a relationship, settling in the work you do, how you feel about yourself.
Yeah,
Like we could think of three examples there. It's like I know quite a few people that are in relationships that are not happy,
yeah,
but they're scared. It's like
yeah,
if I am no longer in this relationship, who am I? I'm going to have to go
yeah.
and find who I really am because quite often in relationships, it's a nice little refuge where you can hide in it. Hide in the relationship and not actually find who you really are. So you
Right.
have to do that. Also, usually you'll have a house together, you might have kids together. So people are like, oh, I do not want to face what's on the other side because I don't know what it is. Like, I'd rather suffer through this
Yeah.
really crappy relationship, but be certain of
Right.
what I'm facing as opposed to maybe it'll be great out there, but I don't know. It's
Yeah, but you got to
uncertain.
make all that sacrifice first. You have to go through
Yeah.
all that
And
sacrifice. Yeah. Yeah.
same in work. I hate my
Yeah.
job. I complain to all my friends about my job, but it's good money. I feel secure. I don't know what's on the other side. And even before the show, Amanda and I were talking about the way that people see themselves.
Yeah.
That they might adopt a victim mentality or something like that.
Mhm.
And if they were to free themselves of that victim mentality and explore, okay, well, is this really how things are? Am I really the victim in all of these situations, or do I need to look inside and find that maybe I'm responsible for some of the things I'm doing? But again, it's like the
That's
thought of
scary.
losing that victim status
That's right.
means, well, who am I going to be? I don't know what's on the other side. So yeah,
Yeah.
people are terrified to
Yeah.
actually sacrifice something.
Well, and it is scary. And I think it's just important to talk about because I feel like there's a lot of pressure on people to find their true selves, or I don't know. And it's probably okay, it's probably because of the media that I consume, because I consume a lot of personal development,
Yeah.
podcasts or videos or books or whatever. So it's probably just the world that I am in that there's all these messages about finding yourself and finding your purpose, and and it's like it feels like something that everybody's expected to be able to do. And I think it's important to realize that it's not easy and we should not expect to be able to do it. Now, I do think we should work toward it. And I think we can get a little closer, but to ever think that you're ever going to really know, unless, like I said, unless you're willing to do something crazy, like, like, okay, so here's my one example, because I've been watching. Did you know David Goggins?
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't watched any of his stuff though.
So he, so for those that don't know, so he was a Navy SEAL. Well, first of all, before he was a Navy SEAL, he was very overweight. I think he said he weighed like 300 pounds and was working like a blue collar type job and whatever, and just you know, he did, that's the life he had chosen at the time. And then one day he saw like a Navy SEAL advertisement and decided that's what he wanted to do. So he goes from
Yeah.
this guy just living this kind of what he calls like a mediocre life, overweight and everything, becomes a Navy SEAL. Took him 3 times to get through it, but he finally became a Navy SEAL. And now he's just like he is like the most self-disciplined, craziest dude that I've ever heard. I mean, because now he runs like 100-mile, what are they called? They're called like not super marathons, but he does
Ultra marathons.
ultra marathons. He does like these
Yeah.
100-mile races. I think he did a 150-mile race once, but I heard
Good
him
Lord.
talk about how to qualify for that, he had to run 100 miles in 24 hours or less. And he was talking about how he had like stress fractures, and he had like all this stuff going on. I think he like had kidney failure at one point. Like seriously, like this dude is literally killing himself. Okay, so fast forward now, and he still does all this stuff, but I also heard him talking about how he thinks he's the happiest person alive because he's been through hell and back. He's broken himself. He's went to the edge. He knows what he can handle, and he's not afraid of anything because he said he's never afraid of what's on the other side of the door because he knows whatever it is, he can face it. So that's what it takes to find has he found his true self? I think he probably has. Do I want to go through all that to find my true self? No, I do not.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
I mean, but that's just a prime example of, and some people will probably say he's insane, but whatever. But I mean, that's the type level of sacrifice I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Where you're really pushing yourself to your absolute limits to see what you're made of. So
Yeah.
I can tell you I'm
I
never ever going to be doing that. So I'm okay with owning part of myself.
Yeah, I'm with you on
I don't
that.
want to settle, but at the same time, I don't need to go that far.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know, because there are many opportunities in life where you could do some really confronting things.
Yeah.
But part of me is like, I just don't want to go through it. I just don't want to go through it.
Well, and sometimes you just weigh the cost and the benefit, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
And maybe we would be happier. I mean, he says he's the happiest person on earth. So, I mean, I don't know. He doesn't ever seem very happy. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen him smile. Because I watched quite a bit of footage of him over time. And I'm not so sure I've ever actually seen him smile, but you know, he says he's happy. So if he says he is, who might argue with that?
So is that maybe the sign of a truly happy person? They don't smile. Maybe we just think smiling means you're happy, but
right, exactly.
You know, there's a lot of people who smile, I suppose, that aren't happy. Like, you know, you always see that big picture of, you know, all those comedians, Anthony Bourdain and Robin Williams, and they're all smiling, and it's like, this is the face of depression. So maybe we've just been conditioned to smile a lot when we're not happy. Whereas old Dave Goggins, he's like, I'm not smiling.
I don't need to prove to you that I'm happy. I know I'm happy.
Yeah, exactly. I'm happy inside.
That's probably what he would say. He would say that.
Yeah. But that's interesting. Very interesting.
But yeah, he's a very interesting guy to listen to. You got to kind of take it with a grain of salt and kind of dial it back, because you're like, okay, you can kind of feel overwhelmed by his message sometimes.
Yeah.
He's a great one to listen to. But I do know in the times that I've made what I would call a sacrifice, which my sacrifices were like very small compared to that. But the times that I've had to sacrifice something, like one prime example was when I went through my divorce. And I had to change a lot of things about my life. And that when I've gone through those periods, I have grown exponentially. I mean, within that, just the amount of change and emotional maturity and strength and just all this that you gain in that period of time when you're going through something like that is exponential. So I do believe, I mean, that proves to me that that is what it takes to find yourself. But my sacrifices, you know, really, if I think about it, not that big of a deal, because even during that time, yes, my life changed a lot, but I still had my family, I still had my friends, I still had a job. I still, it wasn't like my whole world collapsed, even though it kind of felt like it at the time. So I can't say that I've ever really been through a true sacrifice either. I've made small sacrifices.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think? Do you feel like you've ever made like a true sacrifice?
Well, I know I'd be in the same boat as you.
Yeah.
Like, I was just thinking, on LinkedIn, like, I've seen a few people, I suppose, who I wouldn't say they've made a sacrifice, but they've had like a life altering event that's completely
Sure.
changed,
Sure.
who they were and helped them see who they are. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lady I follow who had an accident, and she's in a wheelchair now, and she's like, it's really changed her perspective on life. And
Yeah.
and I heard somebody talking about Christopher Reeves the other day, and how after his accident on the horse and all that stuff, how it completely changed his life and how he talked about things. So like, yeah, I feel like those are life altering events which seem to, in a way, just change somebody and maybe help their true self, maybe accelerate the process that could have
Yeah.
happened if those events hadn't happened, but it accelerates them. But yeah, for me, like the big one, like you, was when, I separated from my wife, and I, until that stage, was very like, dependent on the relationship to kind of help me understand who I was. Like it was, I was the relationship. I wasn't an independent person.
Right.
So, it was really hard coming out the other side of that, because I was like, who am I? So I desperately tried to find another person to be with, so that I could be like, oh, I don't want to confront this question, so I'll just get with another person and we're sorted. But it wasn't until that I started to feel comfortable in myself that started to emerge.
Yeah.
And that was another thing I wanted to say is like, we've got so many titles in society.
Yeah.
And if you become too, if you kind of identify with those titles too much, that can be really damaging for you. So I even think about like the title I've got at the moment of PhD student.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really struggling at the moment because it's not going the way I want it to. I feel like I'm struggling with imposter syndrome a lot. So that title for me doesn't really match how I feel. So I'm really struggling with that.
Yeah.
So that's why I think people have just got to be aware that yourself is such a complicated thing. It could never be boiled down to, PhD student or parent or, accountant or whatever. Like,
right.
Yeah, you're so much deeper than that. And it's such a complicated thing, which is hard to find. So I think that's answering your question. I probably got on a tangent.
No, that's a great point. But it also made, when you said it's complicated, it made me think, is it complicated? I'm almost thinking, because we've been talking about how difficult it is, blah, 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 and it is difficult to find your true self, I believe, just because of the way our brains work. But I think it's probably very easy, but we make it complicated.
Yeah,
it's probably super simple. It's probably the simplest thing in the world, but we just can't do it because our brains want to make it more complicated than it is.
I think that's it. That's the one. Yep.
It's probably the simplest thing ever.
We like making things complicated.
Yeah, because you think